Good morning and welcome to our first virtual lesson. Just trying out a new format for lessons, given that it's a bit of a change. Make sure that we're not just doing questions all the time, and we can move on to some new content. So what we're looking at today is we're going to continue from where we left off when we were in school. So last time we looked at the general atmospheric circulation models. Now we're going to have a look at tropical storms. So on your screens now are the starter questions, same as if you were in lesson at school. I'd like you to answer these 5 questions in your books. You pause the video now, gives you enough time to answer them. Look back through your books if you get stuck. So I'll let you carry on with that, pause the video, and then we can continue on when you have finished. So, like I said, we are going to be looking at tropical storms today. There on the screen is a picture of a tropical storm. That is a hurricane that is approaching Florida, which is North America, traveling over the Caribbean from the Atlantic Ocean. So last lesson we looked at general atmospheric circulation models and how the atmosphere is divided up into the different cells in the atmosphere. So you've got Hadley, polar, and Ferrel cells, and then how that circulation moves because of hot air rising and cool air sinking down towards the ground. Now it's important we have a good understanding of that model, particularly of what's happening along the equator, as we're going to need to understand the conditions needed for tropical storms to develop and the different steps that occur during their formation. So on screens now is a diagram to show the distribution of tropical storms. Tropical storms have got 3 different names they're usually called. They are hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons. They all mean the same thing. They all have the same way that they form and they start, and they all need the exact same conditions to eventually form into a tropical storm. So first key point is tropical storms, typically called hurricanes if you are within North America and South America, cyclones in parts of Africa and sort of Central Asia, and then typhoons within East Asia. That's what they're typically called in those certain regions. So if we're looking at the location specifically, if we look, we see typhoons, cyclones, and hurricanes. They all form within or near the equator and between the tropics. So the tropic, we've got the lines at the top and below the equator. Those are the lines within the tropics. So what I'm going to ask you to do shortly is just describe the distribution of tropical storms. So you can include something along the lines of they form between the tropics, they'll form over the oceans. So specifically, hurricanes form over the Atlantic Ocean, cyclones form over the Indian Ocean, and typhoons will form over the Pacific Ocean. Anything along those lines, I expect a minimum of about 2 sentences, just generally describe where they are. So pause the video now and continue on describing the distribution of tropical storms. Right, so we just looked at where they occur. So now we're going to have a look at where some of the more frequent, stronger. So looking at the screen now, you can see that the scale at the bottom, orange is where the more intense storms occur, and then as the scale moves down, the orange becomes lighter and lighter, where we've got white, which is very low, and light blues, which are very low intensity tropical storms. So most of our strong tropical storms are occurring on the east side of Asia, so along by Japan and China, just traveling across the Pacific Ocean, going from east towards west, towards East Asia. So to measure the intensity of a tropical storm, you use the Saffir-Simpson scale. So when we get to tropical storms that form over the oceans, the general trend is that they form along parts of the ocean, so usually central parts of the ocean, and they travel towards the west. So the reason they travel towards the west is because of the trade winds that occur along the equator. So the trade winds are the dominant direction of the winds. So those winds are caused by the general atmospheric circulation and what's the rising and the sinking of the air along the equator. So now on your screens there's a map to show the average sea surface temperature. The orange and reds are the hotter temperatures, so it's above 26 degrees Celsius. And then if you notice the trend there, so along the equator, which is where we are getting our 26 degrees or above in surface temperature, due to the fact that the concentration of the sun is more concentrated along the equator, hence why it will be warmer. So that's significant because tropical storms need approximately 26.5 degrees to start off to develop into a tropical storm, and then also to get bigger as a tropical storm as well. Anything below that temperature is not enough for a tropical storm to develop, and that's why we see tropical storms developing along the equator, because any higher north or any lower south, ocean temperatures aren't warm enough to create a tropical storm. So our key parts for a tropical storm to form are, we need a high humidity, so we need lots of water evaporating from the ocean's surface, so we need warm waters. We need ocean temperatures of over 26 degrees Celsius, or 26.5 degrees. And we also need those trade winds to help the storms begin to spiral and form that very noticeable circular formation. Right, this is where I'm starting to hand the lesson over to you guys. So I'm going to attach this list alongside with the PowerPoint as well and with this video. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to watch the videos that are linked in the PowerPoint. Using that information, I want you to add some diagrams next to each of these phrases here. So each of these phrases, you can add a diagram next to it. You can print off the sheet and stick it into your book and draw the diagram off that way. You can, if you don't have access to a printer, you could write out the statements and then do the diagram next to it in your books as well. So the key part for the structure of a tropical storm, we've got our circular shape if we look at it from above, like the picture I showed you at the very beginning. And we've got different sections where warm air is rising and we've got cooler air sinking. So the structure of the storm is, in the center you will have the main feature, which is the eye. So in the eye you have cool air sinking down through the middle. This is why you will see more calmer conditions if you are over the eye of the storm. Along the outsides here are our rain bands. This is where we've got our warm air rising, and next to it, each side, we've got our colder air sinking down. So our rain band is where we're going to see our heavy rainfall, and our strong winds are on the outside of these storms here. So these storms can reach massive sizes, so they can be hundreds of kilometers wide. So they are covering a very wide area. So here we've got a picture of a typhoon, because it is over the part of Asia, the Pacific, so it's approaching the Philippines. So we've got our center of the storm in the middle here. So we've got our eye of the storm. The storm is going to move from the east, and it's going to move towards the western side because of those trade winds. So I hope I've explained a little bit about the structure of a cyclone. So now, mind what you're doing is going back looking at each of these steps and adding a diagram next to it, or writing out the steps into your book and then drawing a diagram next to it. All of these will be attached within the assignment on Google Classroom. If you have any questions, leave a comment on Google Classroom and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can to answer and help you out. And with that, I'll see you for the next lesson next time.